Cole, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, fella.
We've got to start off by saying, look, you know, Cole's PR agent sent me through his stuff and said, "Oh, it'd be great if you could interview Cole," and I read it and it was great, and he had some lovely photos in there as well, and it kind of makes Cole out to be consummate professional, middle of the road artist who loves his like classic songwriting and all of that sort of thing. He's actually a really I've got to cut through the mustard here and say he's actually a really down-to-earth fellow who likes to gripe a little bit about politics as well and enjoys a cup of coffee in the morning. So
absolutely,
he is all of those things, and that's the great thing, isn't it? Though, Cole, is that actually in this day and age you can be all of those things. Do you think it's like part of being the age that we are now? As well. You just
well, I just turned 25. I don't know about you, mate, but I think you're 26
I'm
or 26.
26 this week.
I thought so, a little bit older.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's great, mate. I think it's about time that everyone started to sort of stop being so politically correct about their music and just get out there. And I mean, I'm a big fan of musicians and musicianship. And it's funny, last night, actually, I was watching this video of Prince talking about the fact that, as things go on, it's all going to be a button on a computer. And he said, if you really want to be a great musician, you've got to learn an instrument. He was saying how long it took him to learn just guitar and how
that clip.
Yeah, it's a fantastic clip. But, my favorite, someone asked me who my favorite band is. My favorite bands are like the Funk Brothers, which was the house band at Motown. These guys were just incredible. There were a bunch of jazz musicians that Berry Gordy got together and put into the studio and made it sort of a house band. There's the guys in LA, the Wrecking Crew. These guys played on thousands of tracks in the 60s, 70s, Beach Boys, everything, all sorts of stuff. And then there's these other fellas that are Nashville. And these musicians are so good and so great and so top notch. And there was a bass player that just stands out. Every bass player I ever worked with, I always say, listen to James Jamerson. He was a bass player in the Funk Brothers. This guy was just, if you listen to his work, and that's the stuff that still moves me. And I hope, a lot of people get on my back about it, but I'm not a big fan of sampling. I mean, I think sampling is just, I don't quite get it. When somebody says I wrote a new song, then you find out there's 12 samples in there. Well, I don't see that as a new song to me. But at the end of the day, I think that I'm hoping this sort of comes through, that you sort of grind through all the stuff that people pressed a button on a computer and got a hit single out of it. But bit by bit by bit, they drag themselves into seeing real musicianship and people that are really top players and people like that. That's the people I like hanging out with.
It's interesting. I've just been asked to do an interview. I got sent something through last night, and it's with someone that's kind of spearheading, don't shout, AI music, right? who's been a professional musician all their life, and now they're kind of spearheading AI music. Now, listen, right. I get it, right? I get that each generation that comes along, we find another way of making music more accessible.
Right.
Within our lifetime already, we've had the whole record at home phenomenon, which has been massive. Let's face it. Okay, I mean, when I first started out, you literally had to go into a recording studio to produce anything half decent. You had to, right?
Yeah.
Now you can build a studio in your home and you can produce a half decent sound. You might go to a recording studio to do little bits and touch it, finish things off and whatever. And if you've got anything like an orchestra or whatever, you need a room,
right?
But that home recording thing, and I can remember like meeting musicians who had like literally come off the streets and who were like, great at the whole sampling thing and whatever, and were cutting things together and pasting them together and putting together beats and whatever and producing music. And I guess for them that was great. There was an expression, it was enabling them to express themselves, and I'm all for everybody being able to express themselves. But at the same time, there's nothing like actually watching your favourite musician up on stage or whatever and going, hang on, earth are they doing that?
Yeah, I concur, mate, 100%. Because you know, when you go and see somebody like, I mean, I saw a couple of years ago, I saw the Eagles live, and they were great.
Wow.
But, my only but about it, it was so perfect, and they were so good at getting every particular note and chord and drum fill perfectly that you might as well stay at home and listen to the records. I kind of like guys that sort of veer off a little bit, you know, and they tend to do the same music, but they try to give it a little bit more different kind of push or different kind of verve when you're doing it live. And I love that because it makes the live experience even better. Or if they make mistakes when they're live or whatever like that, and you're aware of those mistakes, I think it's great, to be quite honest, because sometimes you get a much different feel from the music that you thought that you knew and you thought that you liked, and it became even better.
And it doesn't have to be sort of like, you know, this isn't a old music versus new music type thing either. It's
Right.
nothing. It's nothing to do with that, right? I watched a clip from the bass player that's out and about with the Gorillaz at the moment, right? Who's a really great musician, and he
Yeah.
was just he was doing stuff like, he said, "Oh, I'm in Stylo," which is one of the Gorillaz songs. He goes, "What you think I'm playing is this, right?" He said, "But that would be boring." He said,
That's great, though. How honest. I love that.
That is the bass line for this song, and
Yeah.
that, if you listen to the record, that is pretty much what you'll hear is this. He said, but live, I like to mix it up a little bit, so I give it a bit of this,
Yeah.
and then I'll give it a little bit of that, and he goes, you know, and then I double up on the tempo a little bit here, and I'm like, you know, and it was like, that's really great. It's great to know that, you know, even with like popular bands and bands that are sort of, you know, really mainstream as well, there's musicians in there that are wanting to add to that live experience. And I do think that in this age that we're getting to now, with the AI coming in and everything else as well, do you know where musicians will triumph and come back to and bring their audience back to? Will be that live experience.
Yeah,
100%.
I totally agree. And I think the funny thing about AI is it really is, it's like, I remember when I was a kid, this song came out by the Cars called Drive, and I was I was quite young when it came out, but I remember the song, I really liked it. But I remember,
gonna drive you home?
yeah, that song there, yeah, great track. But it's funny, I remember, because I used to stick my ear to the speakers all the time, trying to figure out the lyrics and all the rest of it out of my head. And I remember in the following year hearing probably about 10 different songs that sounded like
With
Drive
that in
Part 2.
Yeah.
But that's what musicians did back in those days. They listened to a song, oh, I like that, got inspired by it. But AI basically is all the music you've ever heard thrown into a computer, mushed around. That's why you can say, write me a Beatles song. And it takes bits of every Beatles song, puts it together. So it's still the same sampling as it always was when people talked about sampling, just a different form of sampling, that's all. And so when I see these other things, and like, again, I go back to this musicianship thing again, when I hear a great player, and the guy who's, we just did this little tour with the fellas from Boys Life, and the guitar player I had with me, he's one of those guys that really likes to switch things up live, and I love him for that. You know, I sometimes look over at Cy and go, what the f are you doing, mate? But it was great because it was a little bit different, a little bit changing. Every night was a little bit different, every gig, and I loved that. And that's what made doing live stuff for me great, and I loved it. Just a caveat there, when you were talking about the Gorillaz, the producer I worked with, Chris Potter, who's just great, we were sitting in the studio one day, and he said, you see that little thing over there? And he pulled out I've forgotten the name of it. It's like an old thing you press buttons on, and it gives you beats. Omnichord, that's it. And he said, press that button there.
That's the start of the Gorillaz song.
That's it, yeah. And I said, that sounds really familiar. What is that? He said, that's the Gorillaz tune. But he actually turned to me and he said, isn't that great, though? He took something that just everybody passes by every day or uses it and says, you know what? I can make a track out of that. That's not sampling to me. That's somebody saying, let's be inventive. Let's be a little bit different. I can make something out of nothing. And I loved that bit. It was great. Brilliant stuff.
I think Damon Albarn's actually quite a genius at that. I think he's I mean, you got to look at what he does. He loves his instruments. I mean, he goes around the world collecting instruments as well. I think he just wants to see the song that's in everything.
Well, my
You
uncle
know?
used to say he's the guy. He knows how to dig a diamond out of the dirt, and I think that's what he's really good at. You know, I like that sort of thing, and I like the fact that he hasn't sort of sat on his sort of laurels, you know, and said, "This is what we did. This is great. Blow is fantastic." All the rest of it. He moved on and did other things and tried new inventive things and different things, and some failed, some worked, whatever. But he just kept doing it, and that's a sign of a good musician, if you ask me. He can't grow as manly as a beard as I can, but there you go.
No, he can't do that.
That's the part that bothers me about him. But to be honest, besides that, it's all right.
Well, I can't do that either, only because if I did, it would be divorce.
No, but it's not just that. You've got that Johnny Depp look about you, very attractive. Sorry, you an ex-male model or something? I heard.
No,
It's sort of a rumor
not at all,
online.
no. What? Washing machine model? Not an actual model. No. Although I keep encouraging one of my sons to try and go into that because he's really good looking and he wants to be an actor and whatever. I'm like, just do some modelling, mate.
Well,
Do you
my
know what I
son
mean?
now, my son's a footballer now, but tiny little offbeat story there. I was in Hawaii years ago and he was little and he was a really good looking boy, blonde hair, really blonded hair. This fella comes up to me in the beach. He says, and he's got this sort of New York accent. He goes, "We really like the look of your son." I said, "What the did you say, mate?" I thought he was like being pervy at first. He goes, no, look me up. My name's Gene Krell. He goes, I think your son's great. I looked him up online. This guy used to dress the Beatles and Vivienne Westwood and all these other people. And he was the head of Vogue in men's Vogue in Japan and men's GQ in Japan. And he wanted to make my son what they call a Vogue angel. His mum at the time was leaping up and down, but he was going back and forth to Japan. I said, no, I think I'd rather have my son have a childhood first and we'll see how it goes after that. But yeah, it's a funny thing how he came that sort of stuff. But nobody ever asked me though, so I don't know what happened there. I obviously took after his mother or something, I suppose. But
I think it's it's just some people have got no taste, have they?
Thank you. I think we're going to become lifelong mates. I can feel it right now.
Let's talk about the music that you're making.
Yes.
You have an album out, and do you know what? I listened to the first song on the album, and you're probably not going to get this at all, but do you know who it transported me to? Actually, actually, it transported me to probably things away from where you think it's going to be. It was almost sort of like Nick Hayward stroke Nick Kershaw.
Oh, I got nothing bad to say about them. I always liked Nick Kershaw. I like that song of his. What was that big song? Yeah, wouldn't it be good or wouldn't it be something? Great track that.
Be
Good, yeah, great
Yeah.
track that. Didn't care for the mullet, but the mullet wasn't so attractive.
No, well, the
but
mullet's
rest of
gone
it-
now.
has he gone now?
I met Nick the other day, and the mullet's completely gone. He's so small. Mate,
Is he tiny?
He's tiny. He's like, there's some photos of me and him, and it's like I'm with a child. Sorry, Nick.
Well,
if
he
you're
did
watching
that.
this.
That was, there's always that dream. I've still got it too in my head. You're going to have that one track that sort of breaks through and becomes part of you. That obviously was the track that he was, made him famous or made him big or whatever it is, I want to call it. But there's nothing wrong with that, mate. You can live on one song for the rest of your life. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I met years ago. I met Jimmy Webb, the guy that wrote Wichita Lineman and a bunch of other stuff. And I asked him. I said, "How did you? That's such a beautiful song. I mean, I don't know a musician that doesn't love Wichita Lineman, right?" And he said, it's a funny thing about that. He said to Glenn Campbell, I'd written a song for him. I think it was By the Time I Get to Phoenix, right? And he said, he called me up and he said, I need another track. I need another hit, right? And he said, I don't normally do that. But he said, I've done it in the past. And every time I did it for another artist, he goes, that song died a death. And he said, this was the first time, he goes, I wrote Wichita Lineman, gave it to him, and that I actually had a follow-up track to another track that did well, that did great, or even did better. But I asked him, I said, what was the writing process? He said, you know what, Colin? He goes, I just saw this guy one day, a lineman, and it was in the back of my head. And he goes, I just sat down at the piano. The first thing that came out of my mouth. And he said, that's how the song rose itself after that. And I just,
Mad, isn't it?
I said, I almost felt like saying, F you, that's such a great track. How dare you say it was that easy?
When I went to see Nick Kershaw, he played another one of his hits as well. I'd just be interested if this has ever happened to you. He played The Riddle, which was another big hit, but all of the words on that are complete nonsense. Right? He had 2 weeks to write the album, and And so he literally put down just a guide vocal for that, just a string of nonsense. He didn't have time to go back. So, you know.
Have you ever heard that track for the Italian? There's an Italian guy named Adriano Centrale. He's a pretty famous guy. He's in his 80s now, but he did this track in the 70s because he was complaining that Italian kids and whatever like that, listeners, couldn't care less what the English song was because he couldn't understand a word of it anyways. So he wrote this song that's got a bunch of gibberish on it. And it was a huge hit. Massive hit in Italy, and all he does is he just sings gibberish over it. That's all he does. And he just said to them that I can sing, and his sort of goal was with the track, I can sing anything I want to Italian kids and they'll buy it. And you can find the track. I can maybe send you a link for it if you like. It's actually not a bad track. It's got a great, good beat to a good thump to it. But he just sings gibberish over the whole track.
So here's the question. There was a bit of a roundabout way of doing it, but obviously this album is full of deep stuff about relationships, and there's some heartfelt stuff in there. But did anything survive that was just kind of written as a kind of throw it in there because it rhymes or whatever, and then you just felt, actually, I'm going to leave it?
Yeah, actually all the time. There's that funny line that I think McCartney was playing Hey Jude for the first time to Lennon, and he says something about the line about on my shoulder. And he says to me, "Oh, I'll get rid of that." And Lennon goes, "No, you won't. That's the best line in the song." And he was like, it didn't make any sense, the song. But I've got a couple of songs there. I mean, there's a track called Go On, and I've always liked that track, and we put some horns on it and stuff. But there's a lot of gibberish in that track. There's 100%. Just trying to get through it. But, Noel Gallagher had a great thing to say about lyrics one time. He said that... they asked him, what does that mean? He says, I really couldn't care less if it sounds great with the track. Who cares what I'm saying? Yeah. And it sounds like a lot of people that are really into their lyrics and all, it sounds like he's just sort of fluffing it off. But I agree with them 100%. If it sounds great, leave it in.
Well, because here's the thing. Once it hits other ears, people are going to put their own meaning to it anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, there's that show, The Wire, that I love. There's a show called The Wire, and there's a bit in it where the guy says, he said, how does he know how to figure out what these guys are saying on The Wire? He said, because when I was a kid, he goes, I used to put my ear to the speaker, and I would listen to these Stone, and he was talking about Stone songs, Rolling Stone songs. And there's a bit he goes, Gold Coast Slave, blah, 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 the beginning of, I forgot what track that is. Not Brown Sugar, but the other one. And he says, I had to figure them out bit by bit by bit and what they were actually saying on the tracks. And so, I think that's kind of a good thing. I think sometimes a lot of people would spend a lot of their time trying to discern what the lyrics were and all the rest of it. That was half the fun, to be quite honest.
I actually think, especially in this day and age when, almost having your music written about is part of the battle, actually having some stylistic bits in there or some words in there that don't necessarily mean anything, so then people are kind of like, oh, I always thought he meant that.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's actually a really good thing because it means then people are going to write about your music and go, what's that? What's he going on about? What's that? Oh, I thought he meant that. That's just coverage, isn't it? That's just... Well, yeah,
that verse track that you're talking about, Coming Over, that track actually is a breakup track, and it's quite nasty, actually, quite frankly. But it comes across when I first sing it. It's like, come on over, it's all right. But coming over to tell her to get lost, it was sort of my, it's the ultimate man's revenge in a sense of wanting to be able to get back at somebody by saying, I don't care what you said, this is what I'm saying. And it's sort of, it's got a certain amount of childishness to it, but that's why I kind of like that track a lot, to be quite frank.
Did you, when you were growing up, did you try and mimic people?
Yeah.
When you were singing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah? I was like I say, I was a big fan. My brother was a massive jazz fan, and blues also. So I grew up listening to a lot of his stuff that didn't always appeal to me. I'm not a huge blues fan, but because of that, I would try to copy some of the stuff that he was doing because he was my big brother and I wanted to impress him. So I'd try and copy some stuff he's doing. But he had a great eclectic stuff that I'd never heard, like people like Bill Evans and Brian Auger and all these other groups. And Emerson, Lake and Palmer he turned me on to, like in the 90s. I'd never heard of this band before, and they were. But Keith Emerson was incredible. I mean, just an incredible player.
Do you remember ever seeing like the clip of Keith Emerson where he pulls the keyboard down on top of
him?
Yeah,
I love the guy.
The bumblebee upside down.
Apparently, they're going to have a bit of a comeback because they've. What's his name? Quentin Tarantino in his new film is using some Emerson, Lake and Palmer music. He's using the theme they did for Peter Gunn. Dun, 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 dun. They're using the live version of that in the movie. And it looks great. I just saw you can go online, you can see the trailer for the new Quentin Tarantino with Brad Pitt, and it's got that song in the background, and it sounds incredible. And then I saw the other day they're using in America. There's the beginning of a track. It's called Carnival 9 it's called, and the beginning is welcome back my friends to the show that never ends. They use that track. They've got another country guy doing it. When they're doing the American football matches, that track starts all the football matches off. So it's kind of cool.
Track.
It's so great, and I read a whole thing about him. He's such a lovely guy, and unfortunately I think he was supposed to go on some tour in Japan. He got really bad arthritis in his fingers or something, and he ended up, topping himself, unfortunately. But which is a bit sad, But at the end of the day, it's really, these guys were just incredibly talented. All of them. Carl Palmer, I know, is still around. He's still doing drumming sessions and this and that. And I think I saw something the other day. He's on tour or something like that. But nobody knows about these people at all.
You know what his old trick was?
What's that?
Carl Palmer. This is in the video of ELP Live, by the way.
Right.
If people want to go, you probably go and find it on YouTube. There's a bit where he does a drum solo, so he's, and then he takes his top off while he's continuing. That was his big trick. He used to have two big gongs
He's got these. But I saw he had this drum set that was like specially laser something or whatever. That had these beautiful designs on his drum kit and whatever. That amazing.
And
stuff,
he used to like, so he'd be doing this, and then he'd be like top off, and then he'd be like dun, 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 on these gongs.
Funny thing about musicianship, there was a track also they did. He used to do a lot of stuff by Aaron Copland, and there was a track called "Fanfare for the Common Man," right? So they had a chance. Yeah, that's it, right. So 2 times they did this, right? So there was another guy named Ginestra, and he did a track called Toccata. And when they did these 2 tracks, they went and they played the track for each guy, right? But Aaron Copland had this great thing, and he said to them, well, what's the point of it? And apparently Emerson dropped down like that. He said, the best part about that track is after the main part that you've taken a fanfare of the common, you do all this improvisation at the end. He goes, that's the best part of the track. And he said Emerson's apparently his face dropped 1,000 feet because he just wanted this guy's approval and all the rest of it. And he said, yeah, it's great, but if you're going to do, somebody said this years ago, if you're going to do a cover, don't make it the same as the original one. Do something interesting, do something different. Try to make the track a bit different. And so that was the point that he'd said to them. It's great that you've copied my track, and thank you for that. They did another track by him, I think, called Hoedown or something too, and a few other tracks. He loved his stuff, but he said, if you're going to do it, but don't do it the same way I did it. There's no point to that.
By the way, folks, if you're listening to this, Cole is showing us that he has a complete appreciation for all kinds of music.
I do.
You won't, by the way, though, find on Cole's album 12-minute synthesizer solos. So if that's what you're after, you ain't gonna get it. All right.
The Straubs. I was listening to them the other day for the first time. Why did they go on and on and on? It never ended.
Rick Wakeman isn't on this album. There's nobody skiing, telling the legends of King Arthur. There's none of that.
I heard Rick Wakeman's back on the road, though. I think with his son or something. He's doing something.
Well, all of his sons are doing very well. Is it Adam Wakeman has been doing all of the Aussie stuff, hasn't he? Because he was in Ozzy's band and whatever, and he's now doing all of the sort of super group metal stuff and whatever. So, life goes on. Rick Wakeman is a great guy, consummate professional, but he does owe me some jelly babies because he stole one once.
next time I see him, I'll have to rough him up a little bit for a couple of. But he had a great line. He said to somebody that he got called down to the studio. I think late 60s, maybe. I can't know exactly when the track was done, but Bowie called him up and said, "Could you come down? I want you to play in this track." It was Life on Mars. And he walked out of the studio and he said to his mate, I think this is the story, I heard him say this. He said, "That's the best track I've ever heard." And he said, "I can't."
It is a great track.
And what he does, if you actually listen to the piano parts, that's the part I love. I sometimes, they've got these apps now that you can turn off the vocals and stuff, which is actually kind of great because I love it because I can listen to the musicianship and the stuff. And that guy, Wakeman, is such an incredibly good player and such an inventive player too. And he adds such musicality to the track. And apparently Bowie just said, "Go do your thing." Didn't tell him do this, just go do. And I always think that to me that's the same thing. Like the album was done with all musicians. We didn't do any laptop stuff. It's all musicians, and I say the same thing to them. Without sounding disrespectful, you didn't get hired because you want to do exactly what I want you to do. You got hired because I want to see what you can do and what you can add to the track and what you can make the track better with and all the rest of it. And I love that when a great musician, because they'll come into a studio and they'll just do their thing. And I got a chance to see, there's the guitar player from Toto, Steve Lukather. I was in a studio in LA one time and he was in there playing. This guy is just, I mean, I hate that expression, but it's true. He's just at another level. He's just so, and apparently I heard, then after I'm talking to Matthew McCauley, the producer I was working with at the time, and I said, this guy's played on like 2,500 tracks, Cole. He said everything on Thriller was him except the one guitar solo that Eddie Van Halen came in and did.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And he's played on this track and this track, and he was just so good. And I literally, afterwards, we were doing a couple of demos, I literally dropped down to my knees in front of him and said, "Please." And he goes, "I'm sorry, I can't, mate." He says, "I love to." He said, "But I can't." He heard a couple of tracks. Maybe that's why I ran for the back door, maybe. I'm not quite sure, but still. He was just a consummately incredible musician, mate. It was just fantastic to watch him play.
I do like that. Rick Wakeman also played on Morning Has Broken.
Oh, did he? With Cat Stevens, yeah.
Cat Stevens. And the story is that even now, when he plays the keyboard part for that live, right, he covers his right hand with his left hand at one point.
No way.
And and the reason being is because he never got paid for the gig, right? And after he did the recording, it's a beautiful piano part, isn't it?
Yeah.
After he did the recording,
stunning.
Cat Stevens phoned him and said, "Well, we're going on tour. They weren't taking Rick; they were taking someone else to do the piano part. He needs to learn the piano part." And he said, "Well, you never paid me for it, so I'm not going to tell you how to do it." And so, even to this day, he covers his right hand at one point.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
that is brilliant.
That's the absolute truth.
I love that stuff, mate.
What a gentleman! What a gentleman and a scholar.
No, he sounds it. He's just another one of those guys. You just want to be in the same room as the fella. Hopefully, some of it will rub off on you. You know.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We haven't talked much about your album, but what I think we've gathered from this conversation is that you really love your music, and it does come across on the album.
Well, thank you, mate. I try. I mean, a lot of those songs are a bit older. We've actually got Chris and I were in the studio in March. We put down tracks for another 15 tracks because basically what I want to do. Yeah, I want to put a lot of stuff. I've got tons and tons of music. It just never ends. But we've got another 15 tracks we're going to do because I want to put a lot in the can, and then I want to concentrate a little bit more on doing some more live stuff.
Marvelous.
Yeah, but I'm very excited about some of the new tracks also. But some of those tracks were a bit older, some were newer. But Potsy's got Potsy, that's my nickname for it. But Potsy's got a great way of taking. He's what I put it on the record album too. You can see when I'll send you a record album when we're doing some vinyl now. On the back I put produced and arranged by him because that's an old-fashioned thing, right? But that's what he did. He looked at my music and more than producing, he arranged it. He said, this would be better here and that's that. And that's what he's brilliant at, I think, to be honest. And he's such a humble guy. But then if you look at his track record, I mean, he did 3 Stones records. He did all the stuff for the Verve. He's working with Richard Ashcroft again. He's worked with McCartney, the
Do you
Gallagher
know what? Sometimes
boys.
People really need that. And that's all that people need sometimes is that, it's the same when I'm helping people with their writing and stuff. For it's not that what you've produced is bad at all. Most of the time, people think that they need someone else to completely come in and do it for them. It's not that at all. It's just you sometimes need people to go, actually, if you just put that word there, or that bit which you put 3/4 of the way through, you put that at the beginning, that's stronger, you know.
Well, he complements the music. I think that's what you do. You have the music, but you complement it. But he did a track that he ranged from top to bottom, which is called Sun and Sky. And it's one of my favorite tracks on the record. But he basically arranged that. I had all this stuff. I brought it in. It was like the old story. This a friend of mine knew this guy, Danny Lawar. He used to work with Gabriel and I think with U2 at one point. I think he's passed now. But there was a funny story about Bob Ezrin that he told me, that he was working with Gabriel. And apparently Gabriel comes in with 1,000 ideas, but nothing really concrete. And at one point he was getting very frustrated, and apparently it's a rumor, but I'm sure it didn't get out there. Apparently he got frustrated with Peter Gabriel, and he took some boards and some nails and locked him into the studio and wouldn't let him out until he finished the track that he was supposed to be doing.
I love that.
And that's good. I mean, Chris is like that with me.
I think that's a true story. I think I read that in Q magazine many years ago.
Yeah, I'd heard something from someone, and I went, that sounds a bit fishy, but at the same time, I can understand sometimes, you get some artists in there and they've got, that a lot of artists I've met sometimes, a lot of musicians I've met, they're full of ideas, but they have no idea how to put those ideas on a piece of paper. And their ideas are all great. Yeah. And when they talk about them and they try to, but, like Prince always said, that musicianship comes in handy, because at the end of the day, besides the fact he was talented, I was really lucky, by the way. I got to see him just before he passed. I went to Montreux, and there was only, the smaller crowd there, about 1,000, but he was, unfortunately that night he didn't play guitar, and you could see that he wasn't moving so well on stage. That's why he had the hip, and the whole thing was that he became a Jehovah's Witness and he had hip problems, but they don't allow blood transfusions, so he had to take all these drugs to help him out. But his band, I got to say, and I was lucky that night because I was staying in the same hotel as his band, but he was up in the penthouse, didn't come down. These guys just jaw-droppingly
amazing,
palm-sweatingly, incredibly great musicians. I mean, their musicianship was just so top. It was like there's a fella, the musician in America years ago. His name was Frank Zappa or something, I think his name. I looked up some of his stuff. He was crazy also, but his musicians were so top-notch and so on point and so incredibly good. And I was really, like I say, I consider myself blessed being able to see him just before he passed there. But that was such a great gig, mate. It's one of my favorite gigs of all time.
I think that's one of the great things about someone like Prince is, and I have to say that, is that however amazing he was, and he was just outstanding, absolutely outstanding, he loved seeing other musicians who were great. He loved it. He really reveled in that. Do you know what I mean?
Well, do you remember years ago when he did those 30 gigs, I think, at the O2 or something? Do you know that every night afterwards he was finding a club to go and play in? Yeah. He's going to clubs, like local clubs around Hackney or whatever they think. He was just jumping, all of a sudden show up on stage. I'm like, man, what? This guy that's somebody that just loves music, lives music, 100%. Dies by music, And even McCartney, I remember McCartney in an interview, they were asking him one time, who's the guy that really stands out to you? The only person he said was Prince. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think so, yeah. I think we can all appreciate his talent. I think we can all enjoy. Still, forever and a day, there's still another clip that comes out of Prince every single week that you just think, oh my word.
Have you seen that guitar solo that he did with the George Harrison
oh my word. I mean, that's just
and then gotta love Prince, he just throws his guitar afterwards and goes off stage. I mean, so effing cool that. I mean, I can't, he's just a cool guy. Really was a cool guy from top to bottom.
It's Stevie Ray Vaughan, isn't it, that starts the soloing on that, and who's an amazing guitarist, but he just looks.
Funny thing, we did a cover of in Liverpool. I was there, and we got this harmonicas on stage. He's a pretty famous harmonica player in Liverpool, and we did "Pride and Joy" by Stevie Ray Vaughan, which is one of my favourite tracks by him. Just love that track. Yeah, it came off kind of okay because I didn't know the lyrics and I kept looking down trying to figure out the lyrics. But and the lyrics aren't exactly that hard to remember, but still, it's got this grind on it, and you realize when you're doing it, he's never done an album version. It was only a live version, but it's got this grind. It's a 3-piece band, and it's got this grind, this drive to the track. This just phenomenal stuff, mate. Love it. I'm sorry, mate. I could talk about music all day. I love it.
This is what this whole podcast is about.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the marvellous Col Gerrard. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us today.
Thank you,
we're gonna
Graham. It's
put
been a
some
pleasure,
of,
mate.
Col's music, especially if you're watching this on Spotify, your thumb does that, and it does that, and it does that. Oh, the effort. And now you're listening to Col. Go and add it to a playlist. I know, well, you know, this modern generation, sometimes that's a lot of effort, you know. But we try and make it easy, even for those people that don't want to.
Oh, my God, I've got to press another button. I don't know what I'm going to do today.
We will be back soon with more of my music. But until then, from Col and myself, I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation. Bye.
Thanks, Graham. Cheers,
Bye-bye.
mate.
Cheers.